So let's begin with our motivation. And I think we all like to have quiet minds, a mind without a lot of flurry and thoughts going on. So to have that, we need to live a simple lifestyle and put energy into our practice, and also be very wise about what we commit to do, because there's 1,001 worthy projects, and it's easy to get excited about all of them. But are we capable of doing all of them at one time? Or is it better just to go slowly and steadily and develop our capacity gradually and keep a balanced mind while we do that? So both in our lifestyle, it's very tempting to take on many projects and do many things. In our Dharma practice, we get excited about all sorts of things. We want to do all these practices. And all of it is virtuous. But are we really taking the time to look at our mind? And then when we have the time to look at our mind, are we looking at our mind? Or are we deciding to do something else? So this is why it's important to remember we have a precious human life, and it's not going to last forever. And so while we have this time, although we can't do everything all at once, it's good to make good use of our time in a practical, step-by-step manner. Without being lazy and without being the busiest of the busy. And so to make sure in all that we do, we're taking the time to see that our heart is one of compassion, and that we're acting with compassion. We're not acting out of anxiety to keep ourselves busy. So to really be able to look at all the different sentient beings in the world who have so many different experiences, all wanting happiness, none wanting suffering. And yet, creating the cause of suffering again and again. And somehow we think that we're not doing that. But it's amazing if we look closely how afflicted our mind can be in the course of one day. So to take the broad look, expanding our heart to all beings, including them in our motivation, the broad look, wanting to attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all beings. And also very broad in terms of time, that we're committed to practicing the path for as long as it takes. And so in that way, to go on joyfully in our lives. So with that kind of mind, let us put our attention on learning to think clearly with reasoning. So I don't know about you, but I can find 1,001 wonderful projects I want to get involved in and things I want to do. And yet, can I do that? Yeah. Well, we have a thing at the Abbey. We have many people who come to the Abbey, and they have so many good ideas about what we can do. Yeah. And, this is how we started getting a YouTube channel, because one young man came and he said, "Oh, you guys could have a YouTube channel." And we said, "What's that?" He said, "I'll set it up." And he set it up, and we did a few videos, and then he went off and got married, and we have to take care of the YouTube channel. And it's wonderful, and I'm glad we did it, and it's been a lot of extra work for us. But there's also a number of other ideas that people have come up with of things that we should do that would probably be wonderful for us to do. But it wouldn't work, and we'd get totally exhausted. Yeah, we had one young man come. He was brilliant with computers. And he said, "Why are you using Microsoft? You should use open source. I'll put all your computers on open source." And the man we had another friend a layman who was the office manager in those days. And he said, "Well, that's very good. But after you leave, who's going to fix it? Because none of us know how to run that software." And the young man said, "Oh, it's easy. I'll just do it. You can figure it out yourself." The middle-aged man said, So we turned down his kind request. Yeah, we're still using Microsoft, which has its problems. But even if open source was more wonderful, I think we would have had more problems if we had taken that, because none of us knew how to work it. Yeah. So, really thinking clearly about what is and what is not possible for us to do, given that we have human bodies that can only do so much and human minds that can only do so much. Yeah? And so to keep balanced. But then, to really use our time wisely. And that's why we have a daily schedule. Okay? Because the daily schedule is designed to help us have a balanced life. Yeah, we have during ordinary times, we have 2 meditation sessions. Yeah, we have meals. We have teaching and study time every day. We have offering service time. There's leisure time. You may say, "No, there's not any leisure time." If you worked an ordinary job, would you have 2 hours for lunch? No. You have 2 hours for lunch here. That's leisure time. Yeah? If you were at home with a husband and kids, yeah, would you have after 8:15 in the evening free? Forget it. Yeah. You'd be working all day, come home, make dinner, do things with the kids, get everything set up, crash into bed, wake up in the morning, and do the whole thing all over again. That's no time. Yeah. So I think it's important to see the time we have and then to use it wisely. Yeah? And so especially in setting up 2 meditation sessions a day, those are times for us to be our own friend, to sit quietly with ourselves, to create virtue, to clean up our mental messes and our karmic messes. So the time in the schedule is designed so that we make sure we have that time every day. I lived in Dharma centers where people got so busy that they would just kind of cancel the meditation sessions. And one Dharma center, I know, they had a fire in their meditation hall at 7 a.m. Nobody knew the meditation hall was on fire because no one was in the meditation hall meditating at 7 a.m. Yeah, to me, what's happening if you live in a Dharma center with the opportunity to have meditation sessions every day, and then you're sleeping, doing something else, I don't know what. Yeah. But we're very fortunate to have that time in our schedule every day with nobody pulling us out of it, saying, oh, there's so much work to do. You can't go to meditation this morning. You can't go to meditation tonight. We have to work. Nobody's doing that. We have that time. So it's important that we use that time. Yeah, and that we don't miss meditation sessions. We say, well, but I don't feel good. But you have to check, because if you don't feel good in the meditation hall, why are you going to feel better sitting in your own room? If you have a stomach ache in the meditation hall, is the stomach ache going to stop if you're in your room? You're going to have the same stomach ache, aren't you? Yeah. So if you're going to have the same stomach ache, no matter where you are, you might as well be trying to create virtue while you have the stomach ache. Because if you create virtue, that will prevent future stomach aches. Won't it? Yeah. Why do we get a stomach ache? Because of our negative karma. So some people, Venerable Yeshe has special permission not to come to the evening meditations because of her foot. She has to keep her foot up. That's something that she really can't do in the meditation hall. Yeah. But just check, when do you really need to miss? And, when is it just, well, I don't feel like it, so I'm going to say I don't feel well. We had one lady who applied to be here, and she lived at another monastery for a while. She was very honest with me in her application. And she said, sometimes I would just pretend to be sick because I just didn't feel like going to meditation. She was frank, and she told me that. Yeah. So, it's something for us to check. Are we really sick? Or is it we don't feel like going, so we say we're sick? Yeah. Now, of course, if you're really sick and you're coughing and sneezing and it's contagious, please stay in your room. Okay? But, just check about You know, how you're using your time. You know, when I tell you about my time at the center in Italy, when I was Gego of the Italian monks. Yeah, so the monks didn't like to go to morning meditation. And I was Gego, and Lama Yeshe, in all of his centers, everybody goes to meditation. Everybody goes, So there was me in charge of somehow getting these guys to meditation, because this is what my teacher wanted. How am I going to get a bunch of sleeping monks to meditation? Yeah? And I'd go pound on their door. Yeah, we're up. They wouldn't show up to meditation. And I started thinking, why am I forcing them to do this when this is their own responsibility? And they ordained because they wanted to practice. Here's the opportunity to practice. They aren't using it. Why is that my responsibility to be like a nagging mother to try and get them to go? It's their responsibility to be adults in their practice and go because they have some understanding of the value of daily meditation practice. Yeah. I was so miserable. Every morning trying to get them to go. It was really awful for me. So, we all have to be personally responsible. We're not in kindergarten anymore. Well, we are in one ways, but we're not kindergartners anymore. So, to be responsible and to use our time wisely and not waste it. Yeah, because when we're dying, you can't say, oh, but I want some more time to do my practice. Because it's gone. Heather, I think you all know, Heather finished her water bowl nundra. And she wrote me a long email. I'm going to put it on the web. It's really nice because, when you do the nundra practice, you have to do it every day. Because if you miss a day, then you have to start counting all over again. So that's a really good motivation to get yourself there. And she was saying that she found it so useful just showing up to the cushion every day to do that practice. Kind of come hell or high water, she had to do that practice. And so she developed this very nice kind of rhythm, because her practice started out with refuge and then bodhicitta and the extensive offerings, which is in the Blue Prayer Book, and then offering the water bowls. And during water bowl offering, she contemplated a lot the 4 ways of assembling disciples, the 4 ways of attracting other people to the Dharma, and then dedicating the merit, and then every day kind of doing this over a period of 3 years. It took her 3 years to do it. And how beneficial she found that, just showing up every day doing it. And she wrote in her thing, some days I was so connected with the practice, and some days I wasn't connected at all. But there was such value at just showing up and trying and being there every day. Yeah? And so I think that's really true, because if we may think, oh, I'll practice very hard and meditate, many hours on one day, and then we don't do anything for the next 5 days, And that's no good. Then we lose everything we did on that one day. Yeah, it's better just to do a little bit each day and keep yourself stable and on track. And especially if you have commitments to do succession guru yoga or do a deity practice or whatever, those things you promised your Vajra master to do, those things you cannot just say, oh, I'm too tired today or I don't feel well. Yeah? Venerable Jampa Sadran was telling me that when her teacher, Geshe Thupta Nawang, was very, very ill right before he died, when he was lying in bed, he was still doing his practices. He was dying. When it got so that he couldn't say the things out loud, he had some of his monk disciples come in and do the recitations in the room so that he could follow along. That's how much he treasured the commitments that he had made to his spiritual mentors to do practices every day. And we, those of us who did that, we've made those same commitments. So yeah, some days you're sick. Your meditation isn't that great, but you do it. And it keeps the continuity, it keeps the energy going. Yeah. So this is all a thing of us learning to, we're not showing up to practice to please the Buddha. Yeah, we're doing it because we're stuck in samsara and we want to get out, we want to help other people get out. And in a very practical way, especially if we have guests here, our showing up and our being in the hall is helping the guests. Because if the hall is missing several people every day and the guests are coming here to learn, then they're saying, oh, well, I don't need to come every day either. Yeah, this schedule is just all fluff. It's just, they talk about it, and they tell me to keep the schedule, but, 4 or 5 of them aren't at morning meditation, so why, why should I do this? Yeah, I don't need to go to offering service. They don't keep the schedule, I won't either. So in a practical way, that's one way in which we're benefiting people, just by showing up and showing that example to the guests who come here and to the other Sangha members. Venerable Jampa wrote another... Yeah, she did a very nice one. I'll read it to you and you can see. I think she misses us. Yeah. What is this? A distance makes the heart grow fonder? Something like that. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. Okay, here it is. Okay. So she had written me an email saying that, she's seeing that it's very difficult to keep her precepts and live a nun lifestyle in the secular world. And, she's not working and she's not in university yet already. It's quite difficult. So I wrote her and I said, oh, she doesn't have my email at the bottom. But I just said, go ahead, you're strong in the Dharma and don't doubt yourself, So she said, you encouraged me very kindly a couple of days ago, writing that you are strong in the Dharma, don't doubt yourself. I am not sure, though, if you referred to the doubt in my ability to live the Dharma apart from my teacher and Sangha community, or to something else. But I thought to make a syllogism with it to prove if that could be right. Okay? So, she says, also, I assume strong in the Dharma refers to having the right motivation and following the activities focused strongly on the Dharma. Right? Yes. So here's her syllogism. Venerable Jampa is a person that does not need to doubt her ability to live, study, and practice the teachings of the Buddha apart from her teacher and Sangha community because she is strong in the Dharma. Okay, then she went through, like just what we do here. Subject, Venerable Jampa. Predicate, does not need to doubt herself, living, studying, and practicing the Dharma apart from her teacher and Sangha community. Reason, because she is strong in the Dharma. So the property is
Venerable Jampa is strong in the Dharma.
Venerable Jampa is strong in the Dharma. Okay. Then the pervasion.
Whoever is strong in the Dharma necessarily does not doubt herself about the ability to live and study and practice the teachings of the Buddha separated from her
Teacher and the Sangha community. Right, that's the pervasion. And the count. And so, is that pervasion true? Okay. Then the counter pervasion is what? Okay. So someone who is not a person who does not need to doubt her ability to live, study, and practice the teachings of the Buddha apart from her teacher and Sangha community is necessarily not strong in the Dharma. Okay. Now, when we say Venerable Jampa is strong in the Dharma, or you put your name in it, so-and-so is strong in the Dharma. Yeah, and strong in the Dharma, like she says, means having a good motivation and following the activities that are strongly focused on the Dharma. Okay. My question is, are we always strong in the Dharma? Is strong in the Dharma something that is there 24/7, or is strong in the Dharma something that is there at different times of the day? You say it's always there? So even if I'm creating negative karma, I'm strong in the Dharma? But strong Dharma means having the right motivation. Your possibility for Buddhahood is always there. Yeah. Your possibility to be strong in the Dharma is always there. Are we always strong in the Dharma? No.
Farther along.
What?
We have to be Aryas, I think.
Yeah. So sometimes we are strong in the Dharma. Yeah. And sometimes we're not. Okay. So I think this syllogism holds if you're realizing that a person isn't necessarily strong in the Dharma 24/7.
Or if we changed our definition a little bit so that it's a person that has a good motivation and engages in those activities and has the resource to return to them when we fall off the wagon.
Yeah, but does that mean, if I lose my temper and I start yelling and screaming, yeah, I've fallen off the wagon. Yeah. And of course, the potential's always there. But I could go off and, renounce the Dharma whatsoever.
Right, you could.
By your definition.
No, by my definition, you're strong enough that when you fall off, you can get back on.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I think, takes a certain amount of practice and confidence.
Yes.
So if we change that to be our definition of strong in the Dharma for an ordinary person who's struggling, it's a possibility.
Yeah. If you loosen the definition, so that sometimes you can not be strong in the Dharma and then still be strong in the Dharma. Yeah, we're always going to fall. But the thing is, when we fall, to get back up. Yeah, and not to sit there and go, oh, woe is me. Yeah. And so I think strengthening the Dharma, it necessitates that kind of confidence that, okay, I'm going to mess up, but the Dharma, it means enough to me that I'm going to come back to it. Yeah. So you have to be pretty solid. Yeah. We should make sure we make ourselves that solid. Yeah. Otherwise, we see all sorts of things, When I taught at the Dharma Center in Seattle, you'd find people so dedicated to the Dharma, and then they'd get married and they'd stop, or they get divorced and they stop, or if they're sick and they get well, they stop. If they're well and they get sick, they stop. It was very interesting. Whenever there was some change in their life, then the Dharma fell away. Even though before that change, they were consistent and, very dedicated.
So is it possible to have, I had a question with this with Venerable Seppo the other day, Seppo, when we were going down to UU, is can you have a correct syllogism from a subjective experiential view? Can you say, something about your experience personally, and could it be a correct syllogism even though it's your subjective experience that verifies the truth of the syllogism?
I would need an example.
Let's see.
Yeah, I would need an example.
Well, it's something similar to Venerable Jumpus. I had one that said the subject Semke continues to practice the Dharma because she sees the immense benefit the Dharma brings to herself and others. Or she's been considered tenacious by her friends because no matter what happens, she always comes back around and works with her mind.
Yeah.
So
if there you're just talking about one individual.
Yeah.
Yeah. But remember, and this is the next point I want to make, a proof is going to be something that's always going to be true. Yeah? So if it's just because she always comes around, well, does she always really come around? Is she always going to really come around? She's tenacious. Is she always tenacious? Okay? So, Venerable Tarpa wrote something very interesting, and I didn't have time to read the whole file, but she was pointing out, and this was in response to Christina's question last week about can you prove cause and effect, and I said we don't need to prove cause and effect by inference because it's an evident phenomena we can see with our senses. But Venerable Tarpa pointed out that there's difference between a proof when we're talking about philosophy and scientific evidence. That science can't really prove anything. All they're doing is saying that the evidence is that if this happens, this is going to happen.
Probabilities.
They can give a probability of what's going to happen.
Science
different.
is worked around various statistics, and it's always around probabilities of something. And it's always a thesis that has either a lot of evidence for it or not much evidence for it. So you're always going for the best thesis, and you always revise them as you have more evidence. So there's never a proof. Proofs only happen in the Western thought, in math and logic.
Yeah. I wonder if some basic simple things in science you could say are proved, that when you heat water to 212 degrees it boils. Yeah, but
it changes.
That's true.
On altitude.
It boils at a lower temperature.
I think we just use the word loosely, actually, is the thing.
Yeah, but I think that was a very good discernment between like a system of philosophy or math or something that's more theoretical, where you can prove something, and then science, where you're really going for evidence and what seems to happen more often than not happen. Because in science, you don't know all the causes and the conditions. You can only talk in terms of probabilities. If you knew all the causes and conditions, then you could probably make syllogisms. But we don't, because things are so complex. Okay, so does anybody have things they want to, syllogisms they want to examine? Yeah.
I just want to add on to what we've just discussed too. I mean, even with subjective syllogisms, their value is that they really get us to think, right? And I wanted to appreciate Venerable Jampa sending that one in, because today I was talking to Tracy Trasher. So a lot of people have the same question she does. Can I practice well apart from my teacher and a community? And to have to work out in yourself, proving to yourself that you can do it, or you have some degree of practice.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it made me think proximity to your teacher is not a condition for your practice necessarily. As in, you could be near your teacher and not practice.
Right.
Or totally go off the cliff, right?
Yeah. It's a helpful condition, but it's not alone a proof that you're going to practice well.
Yeah, so that helps me guard my mind.
And similarly, being away from your teacher, it makes it more difficult, but it doesn't mean that you can't practice.
I was thinking about, why is it that the more advanced you get in your practice, the more humble you get? So I made up a syllogism. Advanced Dharma practitioners are humble about their abilities because they realize how difficult it is to reach the goal of Buddhahood. So the subject is advanced practitioners, Dharma practitioners. Property of the subject, they realize how difficult it is to reach the goal of Buddhahood. The predicate.
No, that was your reason. Them being humble was your predicate.
Yeah, that was the property of the subject. Maybe I'm going out of order. No.
Read your sentence again.
Advanced Dharma practitioners are humble about their abilities because they realize how difficult it is to reach the goal of Buddhahood.
Okay. So your subject is?
Advanced Dharma practitioners.
And what are you trying to prove?
That they are humble about their abilities.
That's the predicate.
Yes. Okay.
And what's the reason?
The reason is they realize how difficult it is to reach the goal of Buddhahood.
Okay. And then what's the property?
They realize the difficulty. Okay, advanced Dharma practitioners realize how difficult it is to reach the goal of Buddhahood.
Yeah. Is that true? Yeah. What's an advanced practitioner?
Yeah, someone with realization.
But which level of realizations?
Middle level.
And what kind of realizations? Inferential, direct, realizations of what? Of bodhicitta, of emptiness, of the aspiration for liberation. In general, when we say the sentence, it sounds very good. But when we look more specifically, how are you going to judge who's an advanced practitioner? If you put the bar at, let's say, somebody who's realized emptiness directly, then I think what you're saying is definitely true. If you're talking about somebody who's been practicing for 50 years in this life, that I wouldn't say necessarily makes one an advanced practitioner. The length of time.
Maybe someone who's had an inferential realization of emptiness. How about that's the standard?
I think that would. Yeah. So if you changed your subject to a person who has had an inferential realization of emptiness is humble
about their abilities because they realize how difficult it is to reach the goal of Buddhahood.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's no way you could prove somebody's humble because of their abilities. Excuse me. There's no way you could prove everybody is going to be humble because of their abilities.
Because of their ability.
However you put that. About their abilities.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way you can prove that every single person is going to be humble about their abilities because of that reason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it could be because of another reason. But if you have that, but that doesn't matter.
It could be that they're not going to be humble at all.
Okay.
Even if they have the inference of emptiness.
Yeah, if you have an inference of emptiness,
there's no guarantee that the person is going to be humble.
I would think that.
Now, I'll go with maybe 99%.
But this is interesting because in the Pali system, when they talk about stream enterers, they've had a realization. From our viewpoint, they would have realized emptiness directly. But they can still have the 8 worldly concerns arise in their mind. Yeah, they can. Yeah, they can still have conceit and so on. It depends a little bit on how you outline the path, too, and what you say is eliminated when. But somebody, who's had a direct realization of emptiness, are they humble 24/7? Yeah, 8th level bodhisattva, I think. Yeah. Then you could say that if it was an 8th level bodhisattva. Yeah. So again, it's more a thing of probabilities. Yeah, like it's more probable that somebody who
has an inferential understanding of emptiness would be humble.
Yeah, it's more probable that they would, but it's not. Yeah. And again, does it mean all the time that they're humble?
So that wouldn't be considered a proof, I guess.
I think it goes more on the level of many of the things we've been talking about, that, yeah, it makes sense, but you couldn't prove it. You couldn't make it watertight at that level. You'd have to, I think, be very specific. If you said an 8th ground bodhisattva, or an arhat, then I think, that could be watertight because they've eliminated arrogance and conceit.
In this day and age, we're taught that if somebody has great realizations, that they are not going to really reveal those. Mm-hmm. But the Buddha wasn't like that. He said, "I am awakened," and although I would say he had no arrogance, but in reading the scriptures, I don't see that he shows humility either. He seems to be free of either of those extremes. He seems to be confident. He's confident, but he proclaims that I am awakened.
But he's confident, but he's not arrogant.
No, he's not arrogant.
And when he approaches other people, he doesn't come and say, I'm a Buddha. You guys don't know anything. Be quiet and listen to me. Yeah, he doesn't say that. He's quite respectful to them, and then he debates with them and gets them to see the error in their way of thinking. Okay. So again, it's going to depend how you define humility. I consider being respectful of others as being humble, but other people may not. So you see, again, with some of these words where we don't have the same definition, and it's impossible to make syllogisms when the people don't have the same meanings for the words.
Because I would sure think that a great leader and a person who was renowned in the world, who took it upon himself to care for a completely ill monk that no one else could bear to be around, was a sign of great humility.
But again, not everybody who cares for sick people are necessarily humble. Okay.
So in that vein, I wanted to say I thought the reason was not established for that syllogism for two reasons. I think it's very hard to attain Buddhahood, but that's because of my own low self-esteem or self-centered thought, right? Oh, I can't do it.
Yeah. No, but the syllogism was saying, if you have that, what was your reason in your syllogism? Because they see how difficult it is. They're just talking about if you're a person who sees how difficult it is, then you're going to be humble. They're not making they're not saying that that's the only reason for being humble. Okay.
But then it makes me wonder too, like a lot of literature by great practitioners posit that it's easy to attain awakening, right? There's that whole genre of if your view is right.
Yeah.
Which I don't get it, but
yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I mean, when you're at the high levels and you attain realizations, then it seems quite easy because you've done all the work beforehand. Yeah. Okay. Do we have some other good syllogisms here? People who want to try.
Yeah. I had two back to back that. Anyway, consider the subject, the mental continuum of an ordinary being. It is subject to desire, realm, rebirth, because it is a mind that is under the control of ignorance, craving, and polluted karma. So the subject is the mental continuum of an ordinary being. The predicate is it is subject to desire, realm, rebirth. And the reason is because it is a mind that is under the control of ignorance, craving, and polluted karma. So the property is the mental continuum of an ordinary being is a mind that is under the control of ignorance, craving, and polluted karma.
Okay. Now, by ordinary being, are you saying that that is somebody who's not an Arya?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And the pervasion is any mind that is under the control of ignorance, craving, and polluted karma is necessarily subject to desire, realm, rebirth.
It follows that the bodhisattva in the last moment of meditative equipoise on the path of preparation has a mind that's under the control of ignorance, craving, and polluted karma, because it's a mental continuum of an ordinary being.
The last moment.
Path of preparation?
They still are an ordinary person.
Yeah,
Still an ordinary being.
You're still an ordinary being, but is that an uninterrupted path? Doesn't your first
It's not an uninterrupted path, but it is a meditative equipoise on emptiness.
Yes.
Is that person under the control of ignorance, craving, and polluted karma at that moment?
They haven't eliminated it.
No.
Yeah.
Are they under the control of it? Or are they under the control of their meditative equipoise on emptiness and compassion?
Yeah, because she's saying that on that last moment, when in the next moment you're going to have an uninterrupted path that realizes emptiness directly. So in that very last moment, you're still an ordinary being, but are you under the control of ignorance, anger? So what does it mean to be under the control of ignorance, anger? And attachment, does that mean that they are in your mind, in your mental continuum? Or does it mean that do they have to be manifest for you to be under their control?
But they're not subject to desire, realm, rebirth. I mean, that's what we're trying to prove.
Yeah, but first you have to establish the property.
Right, but if the subject then were more specific, and then an ordinary being with no realizations whatsoever is subject.
Okay.
That would be clear.
Yes, that would be much clearer.
Yeah. Then the second one, this is the one that's
or you could
more
say,
questionable. Yeah.
you could say, you could define it as, somebody who has, a few moments before they enter the final equipoise on emptiness, on the path, the supreme dharma of the path of preparation.
An ordinary being up to a few moments before.
But see, we have to define what is under the influence. Yeah. What does that mean? Does that mean that they have the power to actually throw that rebirth or not? Is that what under the power mean?
Under the control of.
Yeah, but what does under the control of mean?
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean that that mind has the power to throw that rebirth, to propel that rebirth? Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I meant.
Yeah. Because it's true that if you define it that way, the mind in meditative equipoise realizing emptiness, I don't think has that power to propel that rebirth.
Yeah.
They still have the aggregates that they took from the power of karma and afflictions, and so does that mean they're still under the influence until they have?
If that were the if taking aggregates under the influence of afflictions and karma made it impossible for you to ever be somebody. What was the reason in your syllogism? Yeah,
control of ignorance, right?
Yeah. If that made it impossible for you to be, somebody who's not under the control of ignorance, then you could never get any realizations and make any progress, because you're always born in the rebirth where you go from being an ordinary being to an Arya. You've taken the aggregates under the force of ignorance and karma.
Okay, so there's that one, but then I'm still on the rebirth, the pure realm, right? So consider the subject, the mental continuum of an ordinary being that has no realizations whatsoever. It is subject to some types of Pure Land rebirth because it is a mind that has the capacity to generate strong aspiration and merit.
What was read the predicate again?
It is subject to some types of Pure Land rebirth.
What do you mean subject?
That was the question. When we say subject to desire realm, there's no question. But when we get to subject of types of Pure Land, then it's like, well, what does that mean, subject?
Yes, you need to be clear. Are you saying that it's possible for them to be born in a Pure Land? Is that what you're saying? Mm-hmm. Then reword it and say it.
Okay, consider the subject, the mental continuum of an ordinary being who has no realizations whatsoever. It is possible to be reborn in some Pure Lands because it is a mind that has the capacity to generate strong aspiration and merit.
But again, we're saying it's possible.
Yeah.
But that doesn't really give us any useful information.
Right.
I mean, it does in the sense, well, now you know it's not impossible, but that doesn't necessarily mean somebody is going to easily be able to do it.
I didn't say easily. I said possible. Easily is something else altogether. I'm just trying to prove can it be done?
Uh-huh.
So that's why subject, because it was parallel. We don't have a problem with subject when it comes to being a desire realm rebirth.
Yeah, because they have the causes, the ignorance and polluted karma that are going to that they have that, and it's very clear, so that they can be subject to desire realm rebirth.
Right. Okay.
But having the potential to be able to change. Yeah, because then if under your thing, you could say a fly, is subject to rebirth in a Pure Land because Well, I can't remember your
Because it is a mind that has the capacity to generate strong aspiration and
Aspiration.
merit.
right.
But no one would accept that a fly mind could do that.
Yeah. I mean,
Okay,
a fly,
I get it.
Yeah, you see?
Yeah.
So to give you anything useful, you have to kind of tighten it somewhere.
Okay.
Otherwise, yeah, fly, you know. I mean, that's what they say.
Gadflies.
Huh? Yeah.
Dr. David talks about gadflies.
But, you know, yeah, sure, a fly can. But does that mean in that lifetime?
One that I just wondered, like, I had to say at death to make this work because I didn't know how else to do it. But I said at death, Ajahn Mun was free of afflictive obscurations because he was an arhat.
Okay, so you put it, Ajahn, who?
Ajahn Mun.
Ajahn Mun, at the time that he died,
Was free of afflictive obscurations.
was free of afflictive obscurations because he was an
Yes, he was.
arhat.
Mhm.
So then the thing is, can you prove that he was an arhat?
No, I'm just taking that. Ajahn Mun, the property is, Ajahn Mun was an arhat,
Yeah,
and I have already accepted
yeah. So if somebody has already accepted that, yeah, then of course they're going to be free from all those obscurations.
Right.
But if you're trying to prove it to yourself, but you're not sure that he's an arhat.
I'm not trying to prove that he was an arhat. I'm trying to prove he was free of afflictive obscurations.
Yeah, but it's on the basis of being an arhat. And so if you're not sure,
I've already accepted that. I'm the suitable subject.
so yeah, but somebody else could come along and say, no, he's not an arhat.
That's true.
Yeah.
Okay, how about this one?
Okay.
I tried to do a non-observation syllogism, and this was harder. The subject, in the night sky at Sravasti Abbey, there are no clouds in the sky because there is no problem with constellation visibility of the entire sky. I was trying to...
The night sky
Okay.
at
night sky at
Sravasti Abbey. Okay.
In the night sky at Sravasti Abbey, that's the subject.
Yeah.
The predicate is there are no clouds in the sky.
So you're trying to prove that there's no clouds in the sky.
Right.
I see clouds in the sky at night.
Yeah, but I have a reason.
Yeah, but your reason doesn't hold because if I have direct evidence that I see
I'm
clouds,
not saying all the time. It says if you look at the pervasion, it goes. If you look at it, whenever there's no problem with visibility of all the constellations. There's necessarily in the whole sky. There's necessarily no clouds in the sky. That holds.
so what you're saying,
I was trying to write one of these non-observation signs. You're not
Yeah.
observing clouds, and that's why you can observe the constellations.
But the property doesn't hold. What's the property?
The property would be
the property,
the
yeah.
subject. In the night sky at Sravasti Abbey, there's no problem with constellation visibility of the entire sky.
That's not true.
So you have to have it all the time.
Yeah,
Okay.
because remember,
At this very moment.
Yeah.
yeah,
Right now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I was.
okay.
That helps.
Because like you were saying, it has to be something that you prove, and it's like that
All the time. Okay.
yeah.
Okay, thank you. That helps.
So you see why this is really helpful for helping us learn how things exist. Yeah, and it's helpful to make us think more clearly. But in our daily life, when we're trying to prove a lot of things, where conditions are changing all the time, and we don't have control over all the conditions, then it's very difficult to make a syllogism that's going to hold water. Yeah? So you're going to have to make syllogisms where, the conditions aren't always in a state of flux. Yeah.
The subject, the proposed silicon smelter, is meeting with opposition because it will create air, water, noise, and visual pollution and use large volumes of valuable water. So the
Okay.
subject is the proposed silicon smelter. The predicate is meeting with opposition. The reason is because it will create air, water, noise, and visual pollution and use large volumes of valuable water. The property is the proposed silicon smelter will create air, water, noise, and visual pollution and use large volumes of water. The provision is if the proposed smelter creates air, water, noise, and visual...
If something, whatever.
Whatever creates air, water, noise, and visual pollution and uses large volumes of water will necessarily meet with opposition. What?
What about Singapore? Oh yeah, in Singapore it wouldn't be with opposition. And I was thinking, you have a little kid in the bathtub, with a hose spraying water all around, and you have visual pollution, and you have using large volumes of water, and you're, making a mess in the bathroom. And, unless mom and dad come in, that's not going to meet with any opposition. But it's true in Singapore, yeah. Not a peep. Okay, shall we read a little bit? Okay, so you got the chart that Venerable Lum so kindly, so you can choose which visual presentation you find easier. Yeah, I went through one of mine and I made all the things of the same level in the outline red, and then all the things of, other things purple, and so you can color code them so that you can find things easily, or maybe the layout with the, that goes indented, you can find stuff easily, just so, there's the two ways you can look at it. I found his way here a bit confusing personally, but it worked for him, so it doesn't matter whichever way works for you. So, where did we leave? Because just the heading, the selfless. Okay, yeah, that's what. Okay, I have HL1. HL1. Okay. So, in every Buddhist tenet system, ultimate reality is described as selflessness or emptiness. By either name, this refers to an absence, a lack of a self, or being empty of a self. Okay, so there's many different ways that people define selflessness, but the words all kind of come to the same point. I have written this chapter according to an outline. Basically, it tracks alongside the definitions, divisions, and illustrations or examples of the phenomena discussed. This style of presentation follows the Indian and Tibetan style, but it may seem obscure if you're not used to it. You'll get used to it, don't worry.
I think you just skipped to that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're right. See, this is the thing with using this. You go like that. And sometimes it goes to the next page. Sometimes it goes to the previous page. And sometimes it doesn't move. Okay, so now the definition of the selfless. The definition of the selfless is that which is without a self. Okay, exactly what is referred to as the self varies from system to system. But at the very least, all Buddhist tenet systems agree that everything, every object, and every person is free of being a permanent, unitary, and independent self. So let's look at that term. Yeah, permanent means not changing moment to moment. Okay, unitary means not having parts. And here in this trilogy of terms, independent means not depending on causes and conditions. Although sometimes you find people that say independent means independent of the aggregates, but I was taught independent of causes and conditions. Okay. And then self here usually means person. Yeah. So that all these things are non-permanent, partless, independent of causes and conditions person. Okay. Beyond that, they also agree that not only every existent, but also every non-existent too, is free of being a permanent, unitary, and independent self. Yeah. Thus, everything existent and non-existent alike is included in the selfless, and so it is the broadest category. So don't you dare say that a rabbit's horn, or that, the child of a barren father is, is a barren father. Why not? Yeah, is a permanent, unitary, and independent self. Okay. So the Buddhist agreement that everything is selfless does not mean that I am not myself, that you are not yourself, and that a chair is not itself. Okay. Because if it did mean that, then it would mean that they were non-existent. And this is one of the things that the Gelus accuse the Jonangs of meaning. Of course, I am myself and you are yourself. What in the world does that mean, I am myself? Yeah, when you sit and think about it, what does it mean to say I am myself?
I'm not you.
No.
You can't analyze it.
Yeah. Clearly, Buddhists should and do affirm self-identity. Also, the idea of selflessness is not meant to imply that there is nothing. This is very important. Such a view falls to the extreme of non-existence or nihilism. Very often, people think that is what Buddhists are saying, that there is nothing at all. That's not it. So remember this. Selflessness means that all that exists arises dependently. All phenomena, all existence are dependent arisings. If a thing is impermanent, it is easy to see that it arose in dependence on its causes and conditions. You have the body you have in dependence upon your mother and father, all the food you ate, and so on. For permanent phenomena which do not arise in dependence on causes and conditions, as do our bodies, chairs, and so on, they too are not independent entities because they depend on their parts and on the consciousness that perceives them and imputes them. Impute means to attribute or ascribe, and in this case it means that the perceived phenomena arises in dependence upon being imputed. In other words, it is conceived by the mind and given a term, a name of some sort. Okay? But remember, the name doesn't have to be something, like in language, because animals and babies also impute and designate. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Thus, simply, Buddhists are saying that everything that exists and that which does not exist, too, are empty of being independent, self-arisen entities. Okay? So, self-arisen, that they arose by themselves without anything from anything else, any other factors. Now, sometimes the word self-arisen can have many different meanings. Yeah, you can be reading a text on emptiness, and it talks about the self-arisen. Yeah, I'm not always clear about what self-arisen means in those contexts. Yeah, to tell you the truth, it seems to me that there's a lot of different meanings that the term self-arisen can have in different contexts, and I don't know them all. Okay. Selflessness is such a point of importance for Buddhists, at least as laid out in the system of debate, that they mark it as the most inclusive term, taking in everything. So that's saying something, isn't it? Yeah, that the term that includes everything is already talking about its ultimate nature and how it exists. Okay? Clearly, they are making a point about the nature of things and the emphasis of the system. It would be like a Christian categorization of things, with the broadest term being the God created. For Christians assert that all that exists was created by God, and God too is God created, for he is asserted to be self-arisen. God alone is said to have what the German philosopher Gottlieb von Leibniz calls aseity, or self-being. Okay, so the divisions of the selfless. Okay, now when you're reading a Pali text, they don't say selfless, because they say selfless. The word in English can mean like you are very compassionate and you sacrifice your own, a very selfless person. So that's not the meaning of selfless here. So they use the word no self or non-self. Okay? The selfless is divided into existence and non-existence. The traditional division is into established bases, which is mutually inclusive with existence, and then the other part, non-existence. Okay, other guys say, what? No, established base doesn't include non-existence, okay? However, since we all understand existence, though maybe not profoundly, it is easier just to use the term existence here. So you will note that it's spelled with a TS at the end, not a CE at the end. Okay? If it's existence with a CE, then you're talking about existence versus not, the mode of being of something. Here it's a noun. Yeah? Existence referring to phenomena that are existent. You may wonder if the selfless include both existence and non-existence. Is the whole category of the selfless itself existent or non-existent? It is one of the guidelines of Buddhist epistemology that a group that includes both existence and non-existence is itself considered to be existent. Okay, that's just the rule. Thus, of course, the selfless is considered to be existent, even though it has members that are not existent. If the selfless were non-existent, and anything that is a self is unimaginable, that would imply that nothing at all exists. Then Buddhists would be radical nihilists. Thus, the selfless exists. In another way, following this guideline that a mixed group of existence and non-existence is itself existent, then if a class contained only non-existence, it would be a null set. Okay, but does that mean that that null set is non-existent? See, it doesn't answer that question. Because he's just saying, if the set has existence and non-existence, the set is existent. If the classification, the big term, has no instances of it, can it exist? And this was the question I was saying about the set of non-existence. Yeah, does that set exist even though it has no members? Okay, so the set of sky flowers and the set of all the weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, those sets don't exist. And they're null sets and they don't have any instances of them. But what about the set of non-existence itself? Yeah. So, well, that's my question. Does something have to have instances for that set to exist?
I think that the definition of generality is that which has instances. If you
That's
look it
the
up.
definition of generality.
Yeah, I believe so. I think it's in this book.
Check.
And so,
yeah, if that were the case,
I'll look it up again, but I'm pretty sure that's it.
Yeah, if that were the case, then by that definition, then the set of, non-existence as a set would not exist. However, if this class has existent members, it would certainly not be a null set. So he is implying if it's a null set that it's non-existent. But if there are existent members, then these existents show the quality of being selfless and may be observed by a valid cognizer. An accurate consciousness, which is an accurate consciousness of certifying existence. I like calling it a reliable cognizer. Okay. In a similar way, a group that includes both permanent phenomena and impermanent phenomena is itself considered to be permanent. Why? I don't know. As the selfless includes all types of existence, it is considered to be permanent. Okay. The selfless is 3P without anything that is neither, with practically any existent for which there is something that is that existent. From existent itself to a chair. Other than the existence of which being them is not possible, like a table and a chair, because there's nothing that is both a table and a chair. Okay. Other than the existence of which being them is not possible, as mentioned below, with which it would compare as MX mutually exclusive, the only other comparison with the selfless would be with those things that are mutually inclusive, that it is mutually inclusive with, such as its definition above and the things that are non-selfless. Of course, it does not compare at all with non-existence because the process of comparison requires two existence.
Just found in debate, it says the definition of a generality, that which encompasses its manifestations. And then it goes on to say a generality is a general phenomena which is manifest through its instances. So I think if it doesn't have instances, you couldn't have a generality.
You couldn't have the generality, yeah. But I somehow like having a set of, a null set of non-existence. Because we talk about them.
Yeah.
Yeah. We talk about the set of non-existence. Yeah, that is non-existent. Can you have a set of chair and table? There's nothing that is a chair and a table. Can you have a set or a generality that is chair and table? According to this, you couldn't have that generality because there would be no instances of it. Okay. So existence. Recall that Buddhism describes itself as a middle way between the two extremes, the extreme of existence, the false belief that something exists when in fact it does not, and this extreme of non-existence, the false belief that something does not exist when in fact it does. Okay, so it's very important to understand these terms here because, if you say, oh, it's the extreme of existence and we're refuting the extreme of existence, then if you don't understand what the term means, then it sounds like you're trying to prove that nothing whatsoever exists. Yeah, so existence here means a false belief that something exists when it doesn't. Okay. So you'll find this, because we'll talk about the two extremes of absolutism and nihilism. So that's clear. Those two are extremes. But then you hear the extremes of existence and non-existence. And you say, things neither exist nor they don't exist. It's very easy if you don't understand the meanings of those terms to get quite confused at that point. I say from experience. If we avoid these two extremes, what is left over is the belief in what does in fact exist. Also recall the commentary of Khenzer Yeshe Thupten, who said that reliable cognizer, a true understanding of any existent, means the measure of what exists. So according to the Buddhists, what does exist? Okay, so now we have the definition of existent, that which is observed by a reliable cognizer. Then you have to understand what a reliable cognizer is. So it's a certifying consciousness. What does that mean? Whatever it observes must exist. This is in line with the principle that you cannot know that which does not exist. Okay? So that's important, Our whole thing of when the tree falls and nobody's there, is there a sound in the forest, okay? So whatever is observed must exist, but then you have the thing, if it's not observed, is it necessarily non-existent? So then, does it mean if it's not observed at that very moment, or it's not observed by a human being, that then it doesn't exist? Okay, so it can be observed by animals and insects. I'm sure they hear the sound when a tree falls in the forest. Okay. But then, and then some people say, well, Buddha's mind, sees everything, so it is cognized by at least something. Yeah. But then other people say it doesn't, that which is observed or perceived by a reliable cognizer, they would say that which is perceivable. Yeah. That's what his holiness says. Yeah. So, in other words, it doesn't have to be perceived at that very instant, because, and the example is, 500 years ago, did people die of cancer? Well, nobody knew what in the world cancer was. You would say the word cancer, nobody had any reference from it. Does that mean that cancer did not exist because there was no word for it and nobody perceived cancer? Okay, no, it doesn't. It was perceivable. So we're going to come here into one of the other synonyms with existence, which is sometimes translated as object of knowledge or knowledge object. And I think a better translation is knowable object. No, just the term.
Existed.
I'm just talking about, there's another term that is synonymous with existent. And that term is often translated as either knowledge object or knowledge object of knowledge. And I'm saying maybe it's better to translate it as knowable object. So it's possible to know that by a reliable cognizer, but it doesn't have to be known at that very moment. Yeah. Okay. For example, something, some disease that nobody even knew about before, but that people still died from. So this seems rather circular on the face of it. An existent is what is observed by a reliable cognizer, and a reliable cognizer observes existence. Yeah, it does seem circular, doesn't it? In this system of thought, they hold that a reliable cognizer cannot be wrong in regard to the object it understands. Even though it does seem rather circular, it does not bother me as much as it used to. Yeah, so that's nice, but that doesn't prove anything. Okay. It seems that the point of it is to affirm the certainty of knowledge as opposed to mere belief. And in this meditative tradition, to affirm the priority of consciousness rather than the outer world. Yeah. So it's by all these definitions, we see all of these definitions are posited in relationship to a mind. Yeah? Okay, so all the synonyms of existence all have to do with being perceived or known or realized or observed or something by a mind. So that, and so you could say, okay, that's the premise that you can't know anything that doesn't exist. Yeah, that sounds good. But when you think about it, it means that everything that exists in relationship to the mind. Somebody's mind, somewhere. Yeah, that you cannot posit an external, objective world separate from a consciousness that knows it. So I think that whole principle of emptiness is embedded right here in the definitions of existent. Yeah? Because already to exist, it has to depend on a mind, which means it's not independent. And it depends on the mind. It's not just saying it depends on causes and conditions or dependence on parts. It's dependent on the mind. So the mind is, really involved in the fact that things exist.
You're saying that they've embedded dependent designation with these definitions. Is that what you mean?
I'm just making a general statement that all these things depend on the mind. And, of course, I am implying, yes, they depend on designation. But what we're getting at is nothing exists apart from a mind that knows.
Maybe I heard you wrong. Did you say, so the principle of emptiness is embedded here?
I said the principle of emptiness is expressed in this, because why is emptiness expressed in this? Because this thing keeps jumping around, but I keep touching it. I said emptiness is, if we really think about these definitions, we'll see that the definitions are really coming to emptiness, because it's saying anything that exists depends on consciousness, meaning that it can't exist independently. So there's no such thing as some existent object that is out there totally unrelated to consciousness. But that's very much our idea when we perceive things, isn't it? When we look at everything, it looks like it's an independent entity out there, unrelated to consciousness, and that even if no consciousness, Buddha or otherwise, perceived it, it would still be there because it has its own essence. And that's wrong.
By modifying this definition to that which is observable by a valid cognizer, it kind of weakens that and puts it more in the court of the object by saying observable or perceivable instead of perceived. It seems to make more of the impression that that object's there waiting to be seen.
That it's perceivable.
Mm-hmm. That may be why they do it.
It could imply that. But to say, it is known at this very moment also has difficulties.
It does. Both of them can lead you to wrong conclusions.
Yeah. A problem with words, isn't it?